Testy. 1, 2, 1, 2. We live?
Yeah, you are testy.
Did you catch that? Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Nicholas,
Mm.
someone still has not placed an order for my daughter's fundraiser.
Oh, it's funny how that slipped my mind. I have a tendency when I get badgered to forget things.
Yeah. I'm going to badger my foot up your ass if you don't get on it. Speaking of which, I was camping this past weekend, Nicholas. Chilly outside out there at tent camping. And a bear visited our campsite.
Get out.
Yep. I'm sleeping, and I was up. So something woke me up. Maybe the bear, and I hear a noise. It's not uncommon to hear critters. Usually, I've had turkeys walk through our campsite before. You might get a raccoon or other critters, but this one sounded big. The night before, we had heard coyotes, so I'm thinking, oh, maybe there's a coyote traipsing through our tent, or through our campsite, and where my head was. The creature was no more than a foot away. And I'm not going to lie, I was scared. I sat upright. And in my head, I started thinking about, okay, if this thing comes crashing through the tent, I'm going to scoop my daughter up and get her right in between me and the air mattresses and whatnot. And then you hear this thing, whatever it was. I didn't realize what it was at the time. I thought it was a coyote. Traipse away. Get up the next morning, and my buddy goes, "Did you get woken up last night?" And I said, "Yeah, I think a coyote came through our campsite." He goes, "No, that was a bear."
That is wild.
Yeah, it's the first time I've been at a campsite where they had a bear locker, essentially a big metal container where normally we always put our food inside the cars. But for the trash, you put it in this thing, and it closes in such a way that the bear can't get in there. And he goes, "Yeah, you walk behind your tent, walk between ours." I had to hold my dog close and tell him not to bark because he was about to bark.
Ooh.
And then he went over to the bear locker and then walked away and went down to the other campsites. So that was, yeah.
So where was this? Beneath the trees where nobody sees?
Yeah, this was out in Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
That was
Western Mass. So.
Was that too much of a reach for you? Did that go over your head?
No, I got beneath the trees where nobody sees.
You just didn't. It wasn't funny. Okay, that's fair. All right, I understand.
Yeah, okay. I got you, Nicholas. Speaking of which, I was definitely scared.
Dude, I can't believe it.
Yeah. Speaking of which, and we'll get to it in just a moment here. I have painstakingly gone through, and I think collected most of, say, at least 90 to 95% of the new books that came out over the past year. Written them all down. And started going through, and I think I've got half of my floppy awards narrowed down-ish.
Nice. That's awesome. So, I appreciate you doing all that work for me, so I don't have to do anything.
Beneath the trees where nobody sees might come up again. When
did that start?
It started October. I think it started within the time frame there. But with that said, I will stop rambling.
Game changer.
You're telling me. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of all ages, TLDR Studios proudly presents to you the greatest, and I mean the greatest, podcasting team in the world. He's the comic book writer, Nick Friar. I am your bear-scaping, back-cracking talking show, and together we are the TLDR Comic Book Club, baby.
10 out of 10, no notes. Well done, sir. Even with that little wrinkle in there, too. Nicely done.
I'm getting old. I'm all about the wrinkles, baby. It's nothing new to me.
Yeah, speaking of wrinkles, we got none of those for you guys this month. We are full in on spooky season. We are talking horror type books throughout the month. So no expected fireside chats, of course, that can always change. And it doesn't mean we're not going to have some to close out the year ahead of the floppies. So make sure you're subscribed to one of our audio channels. That is the only place you're going to find our Fireside Chats, which are conversations with creators across the industries. Again, find those on Apple, on Spotify, Geeks Worldwide Radio, Amazon, Pocket Cast, all the major podcasting platforms. You can find us there. That is the only place you can hear those conversations. It's also the only place, because you can't do this on YouTube or on Twitter or on Instagram, where you can leave a 5-star rating and review for the show. Please do that. It helps the show a ton. 5 stars only, or if you can do more by all means. Otherwise, you're gonna learn the real meaning of backcrack. And that bear almost fucking found out this week. Fuck around and find out, and Dr. Joe's gonna give you the what's God damn it, I almost had it at the end there. Anyways, speaking of wildlife, we have no catching up to do this week, but there is an element of at least wildlife in the title of this first look that Joe is going to be giving everybody. We got an early look on a Mad Cave title that's going to be coming out this upcoming week, not this week, the following week.
Yeah, we'll be doing a couple of first looks in the coming weeks, because Mad Cave is giving us a few advanced review copies here. So Hour of the Wolf, issue 1 for Mad Cave Studios, written by Mark London, with art by Danielo Beyruth. I believe this is part of the Underworld universe, which encompasses Revolution 9, which we've talked about on the program, Hour of the Wolf, as well as Exit City, all of which I've read. But I'm going to highlight Hour of the Wolf this week, and just to kind of keep it tight and keep it short without we don't want to spoil too much. This book is effed up right from the rip, and it was the art that sold me. There is a panel, Nicholas. I don't know if you've read it or not, but it's not giving anything away. But there's this panel where a painting comes to life, so to speak, right before your eyes, and that's all I'll say. And it is one of the most. What was the James Tynion book there? The Neil Gaiman series. What's the
are you talking about the Corinthian? The story about the
Corinthian? Yeah. Right.
I'm blanking on what that one was called, but yeah.
The Netflix show.
I know you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, no, Sandman. Anyways, it's
Sandman. Thank you. Right. The artwork in that freaked me out so much I couldn't read the rest of the book. I was almost there with some of the art in these first few pages here. And so like you just pulled into this, like you're like, what the hell is going on? And essentially what it boils down to, a father is presented with a horrific choice. He's either to fork over his family or die. And the glimpse of his future, if he doesn't give over his family, scares the shit out of this guy. Is so terrifying that he says, I'll do it. Right. That premise alone, like anytime where you got a story that involves like kids and some shit's going to happen to the kids, like always, like just sort of gets to me and really kind of, fucks with my head. This was just so well done. It's a paranormal horror story. This is going to be one to watch out for. I believe this drops next week.
Yes.
So by the time you listen to this, October 23rd, new comic book day. So if you see this book on yourself, grab it, because this is a great little sort of sci-fi paranormal horror story that revolves around a character who is sort of stuck in time, if you will. And he's got 1 hour of every day to sort of solve these sort of paranormal mysteries, or else he's doomed to purgatory, if you will. So I loved it. I know it's a little all over the place there, but I read this. It hooked me in immediately. I didn't need the last few pages to hook me in. It was the art right from the rip, and the story just further sold it for me. So make sure you pick this book up when you get to your local comic book shops.
The Sandman title that we were trying to think of, which I talked about on the show because you tried reading it and then you were like, fuck this, as you mentioned, because of the art, is Nightmare Country. I just couldn't remember the name of the friggin' title.
Yes,
but set in the Sandman universe, but written by James Tynion IV, starring the Corinthian. Now, so we got an early look. It's time to get to what's new this weekend. We're not doing any catching up. There is a fuck ton of stuff that came out this week that Joe and I are reading. You guys all know we're doing a mainland episode. When we just do what's new specials, we don't hit on every single book that's coming out this week. I want to mention this for just for the future, and we can mention it going forward as well. We always pick out the books that we want to talk about. We're always reading as much as we can. If there's ever titles that you guys hear us talk about a bunch that you're particularly excited about or whatever, feel free to send us a DM, whether it's on Twitter /X over on Instagram. Those are pretty much the places you're going to be able to get us directly. Let us know if there's a particular title that's coming out from the companies that we usually hit on that we get review copies from that you want us to break down, do some level of preview for. Joe and I pick the stuff we want to do. We're still going to keep doing that going forward, but just in case you, the listener, have a certain title that you're back and forth about, if it's a first issue or it's something that you're particularly excited about that you want to hear more about. Just wanted to float it out there, Joe, because this week we could have gone in so many different directions. Just looking at Marvel alone, we have quite a few titles that you and I are both particularly excited about. Why don't you take us through what's coming out from Marvel this week?
Well, yeah, we could have done the entire episode on just what's new.
Yeah,
and talked about the books and what's new and filled up an hour and a half.
We keep it pretty tight anyways. We could always do that, quite frankly. But like, yes,
True.
this time more. We could have done like 2 hours on these titles because we have so many books too that you and I are both reading. I mean, looking at Image too, there's like 5 titles that you and I share. And then,
Image had a week.
Yeah, and there's just and there's stuff that we didn't read, stuff that like I'm looking at the list. It's like, oh fuck, how did I miss that in the review copies? Because that obviously happens to us. So much stuff. But Marvel, a big week for Marvel.
Big week for Marvel. So we start with Ultimate Spider-Man issue 10. I'm going to say this right now. Ultimate Spider-Man is up for best continuing series of the year. It is in the conversation. We have Uncanny X-Men issue 4, Miles Morales Spider-Man issue 25, Wolverine 2, which has been excellent so far, The Spectacular Spider-Man, and I actually said that one correctly, issue 8, Spider-Man Reign 2 issue 4, Venomore Venomous issue 3, Daredevil Woman Without Fear issue 4, Avengers Assemble issue 2, we got Venomore Deadpool issue 2, Blood Hunters issue 3, Star Wars The Battle of Jakku Insurgency Rising issue 2, Avengers United Infinity Comic issue 52, Mystique issue 1, which you read. I didn't get a chance to read. This is by Declan Shalvey. You loved it, right?
Oh, dude, Mystique issue 1 was so friggin' badass. We've been talking about Old Dog on here, which he, of course, Declan created, wrote, draw, everything over at Image Comics. So you see him get Mystique, and it's like, okay, yeah, of course that makes sense, especially after what he did with Old Dog. This was so damn good, man. If you at all like Mystique, you have to read this first issue because I'm all in after. And Nick Fury's at the center of it all too. It's just the action, everything. Like he utilizes Mystique's powers so well too.
It's God damn it, Nicholas. I'm going to offer it up to you.
Okay, Dibs. Yeah, 100%. Okay. Thank you. Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
you're up for that one. I'm not gonna be like, oh no, you gotta read it. No,
well, I do want to read it, but
no, I appreciate it.
We love indie books, and our main lines predominantly are indie titles. I do feel like we should mix in a little Marvel and DC just a little more often. So this is a good opportunity to do that.
Yep, definitely.
Because it sounds like a fucking tremendous book.
Yeah.
So that I'm just saying.
Nice.
That fundraiser in is ending soon.
Is it actually?
Soonish.
Okay. That I actually need to know. Thank you.
Not to put pressure on. Again, don't feel obliged. Other Uncle Nick bought something already. Alien Romulus issue 1. Yeah, right. Alien Romulus issue 1. Crypt of Shadows issue 1, and there's another number one, Nicholas.
Yeah.
That you would love to discuss.
Yeah, so I'm gonna. I've said this many a time. I'm gonna dig in to Jed McKay and Alessandro Capuccio's run on Midnight on Moon Knight at some point. Yes, at some point on the show, they had Moon Knight. They had was it Death of Moon Knight? The Revenge of the Moon Knight. That's what it was. And now they have Moon Knight. Fist of Khonshu issue 1. They've done so much with this character, and it's been absolutely outstanding. If you don't wait for me to talk about it on the show, get in on it. To me, like with this re-entry, it's a re-entry for me, for someone who's been reading Moon Knight and been with McKay throughout his run. It's a great restart and kind of get things going. It's also great for anybody who is a new reader to Moon Knight. It's a nice little spot where, okay, I'm familiar with some of the stuff they're talking about, and it's a little bit of a refresh because everything that's been going on with Blood Hunt. And then if you're new, it's like, here are some of the key players, here's what's going on, and then just a bunch of kick-ass Moon Knight shit. Like if you're looking for a badass street-level superhero story, you have to read Moon Knight, Fist of Khonshu. It's an excellent first issue. And one of the things that I particularly love that I wanted to highlight too, Joe, is that this issue really made me realize how much I love when you get good narration about a character that doesn't where the character's not involved in the conversation, but then that character you seeing it, all the art is that character. So it's narration over a character doing an awesome like action sequence, whatever fits for that character. We get that with Moon Knight here, and it's like this is it's just scratching that. It's just right. I don't know what itch that is, and I'm sure I should see a doctor about it.
Creams for that.
But thank you. But like it, oh god, it was like a great issue. So if you're interested at all in Moon Knight, even if you haven't read any of his stuff before, read this. You'll go back and read the other stuff if you read this issue, but read this. It's just so much fun.
Love that. Love that.
All right, let's go through DC and another company that had a huge weekend. You have two books that you want to touch on. We got Batman Superman World's Finest issue 32, Action Comics 1071, Wonder Woman issue 14, Titans issue 16, Green Lantern issue 16, which by the way, I'm going to try and take a look back at some Green Lantern stuff, Joe, because we got the casting news and I'm blanking. Is it something? It's not Pierce, but the guy who's going to be playing Jon Stewart, I'm blanking on him right now. He was just in that Netflix show. He was awesome as like this ex-Marine. I'm derailing here, but
news.
Okay, yeah, we got the new we got the new Hal Jordan and the new Jon Stewart in the first live action Jon Stewart technically. So very excited for Jon Stewart. I think both castings were great. Anyways, Catwoman 69, Jenny Sparks.
Nice.
Was waiting for that. Jenny Sparks issue 3, Multiversus Collision Detected issue 3, Batman Wayne Family Adventures issue 134, Batman and Robin Year 1 issue 1, and then we got two titles. One that both of them that I'm reading. One I'm behind on. One I didn't get to this week because it's such a massive week. But thankfully, what we do on the show is we make sure we're always covered on all ends. You take it away, Joe.
Well, I'm going to start with Nightwing.
Okay.
118. This is the end of Tom Taylor's run. Didn't screw it up this week. On Nightwing. I've said this before, like the comparison I make is Tom Taylor's run on Nightwing is akin to Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil. Both writers took characters that I knew, I was a fan of, but never read their books. It was just like, they were never like, these are my guys sort of thing, as I dropped my pen, and made me care about them deeply. And the way that Taylor, wraps up his run on Nightwing, I think was just, it honors everything that he started when he took over the character, what he developed him into, and really just, to me, made Nightwing one of those A-list characters for me, right? There's just something about, the way he wrote Dick Grayson. It was very heartfelt. It was very relatable. There was just something very special about this character, and the way he wrapped up the Heartless, storyline that he had weaved in and out throughout his run, which I thought was brilliant because it was never solely like it was never ever just bogged down with Heartless. Right. And he was there and he would appear and he would be devastating when he did show up. And I think using him the way he used him made him that much more, evil. And there's a moment in this issue between Dick Grayson and Heartless where the two of them are confronting each other in front of a group of people. And they have this little whispered conversation back and forth. And if there was anything I would ever say about this series that was sheer perfection, and there's been a lot of moments, it was this moment between the two of them. And when you read it, Nicholas, and anyone that's been reading this, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm excited to see where the character goes from here. I'm excited to see, read Tom Taylor's run on Detective Comics. But this was a very fitting ending to Tom Taylor's run. It was just perfect on every level.
Nice. That's. Yeah. I mean, you can't ask for more than that. He did, like as you said, like he did so much for this character. I mean, Nightwing is beloved, and he really found a way to elevate him on a few fronts. It's awesome stuff.
Yeah. So then the next book I want to talk about, Nicholas, is maybe my favorite issue of the series so far,
Ooh.
and that's Dark Knights of Steel All Winter, written by Jay Kristoff. And you and I, right from the beginning, speaking of Tom Taylor, right, love the Dark Knights of Steel storyline, right? It's sort of this, I wouldn't even call it an otherworld story. It's just its own thing. It's a fantasy spin on the characters that we know and love and putting them in different roles and changing things up a bit, right?
Mhm.
And what Christoph has done with his adaptation with this All Winter storyline has been just sheer. Uh, it's been sheer perfection. I love it, right? Because the premise of it is it's in this universe, but it's different than what Tom Taylor gave us, right? And I think what also I think elevates it so much is Tirso Khan's art, right? Because as the title implies, like All Winter, you're getting a lot of shades of gray in this with the coloring, but you
Yeah.
do get these pops of color in it that just really elevate the story. But we get we get some really important backstory in this issue that really sort of, okay, this is what we're fighting for. This is where our characters, this is the direction, like this is where they need to go. This is why, the world, the realm that they're in, is in this perpetual winter. And we get a great character, in this issue that fights alongside our protagonists. And I won't say, I don't want to give it away, but this was an excellent issue to what has been an excellent series.
Yeah, it's must read stuff. I mean, and yeah, you've like they have it sucks like with DC, like they're doing all the Elseworld stuff, and obviously we have like the absolute Batman and Wonder Woman, and we're excited for the other ones that are going to be coming. But they're and with that, where it's kind of got a tie to like the main DC universe, like I understand calling that Elseworld, but I agree with you. Like we don't need to like. There's this need to put these labels on these other titles to make it to kind of help people understand why this is its own thing. But it's I don't know. Part of me is just like we don't need to bunch all these Elseworlds in as
Mm-hmm.
like this larger group. Like this is its own thing. Like if you want to label it, don't bunch it in with other shit. I don't know. I don't the categorization sometimes can
Yeah,
annoy me in general.
yeah, right. Same. It's just taking the characters, and putting them in a fantasy setting. It's like you took your characters, right, good and bad, put them in a bag, jumbled it all up, and then you get what you get, right?
Yeah, it's pretty
And
obvious. Like this one's pretty obvious. Whereas like Absolute Batman, like kind of like putting the caveat on like this is Elseworld. Yeah, because it's still set in Gotham in present day and all this
yeah,
kind of shit. Like, oh, I get that. That's fine. With this, it's like I mean, it's just fantasy. That's
it's
just
its own
it's
thing,
clear as
and it's
day.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I
I,
love it.
I love it. I love this kind of shit. It's I mean this is the kind of stuff that comics is all about too. Just like taking cool characters and hey, let's get fucking weird and try something different. And it's
Yeah.
really worked out well on multiple fronts already. Image and Skybound, we got a lot. But there's one title above all else that we're talking about from them. But why don't you take us through it?
Yes, so from Image and Skybound, we have the Department of Truth issue 26, Destro issue 5, which I believe is the finale to that. I just got caught up and I read the finale of Scarlet, which was excellent. Destro has been excellent. This is also in contention for most surprising book of the
Mm.
year. Because if you had said told me I was gonna read a Destro comic in 2024, I would have said, yeah, right. The Walking Dead Deluxe issue 99, Falling in Love on the Path to Hell issue 5, another excellent series. The oddly titled or numbered, I should say, Local Man issue 25. Did you read this, Nicholas?
I did.
I did. So I might have believed that this is sort of a one-off,
I don't know.
right? Because
I'm
it's out of sequence numbering, and it's at the 25th anniversary or something, right?
It's
There's
like a thing that Image it's like an homage to something Image did years ago where they, like, moved
yeah.
stuff forward in time and stuff, and, like, that's where they did the 25, so I don't know. I'm not sure.
It'll be interesting to see what the next issue because this was an excellent issue.
Yeah.
But I got the feeling like at the end of it, like this is its own little self-contained thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, people out there. And but it's still excellent, excellent stuff. Rat City issue 7, Ultra Mega issue 6, Moon Man issue 5, Witchblade issue 4, Black Cloak issue 9, Violator Origin issue 2, The Domain issue 4, The Tin Can Society issue 2, Self Help issue 5, Rifters issue 5, Dead Eyes, The Empty Frames issue 2, Medieval Spawn issue 1, Impact Winter Even Fall number 1, Ice Cream Man presents Decompression in a Wreck issue 1, Faster Than Light 3D issue 1. And with all of that, the biggest books to drop this week is finally the ending of the Catalyst War, Radiant Blacks issue 30 and 30 and a half.
Yeah, so of course it's Kyle Higgins, Joe Clark, Marcelo Costa, and Eduardo Figueroa. And simply put, Radiant Black is never going to be the same. I am blown away with how things transpired with the ending of this event. For me, it's always going to leave room for some level of angst because you never know when things are going to take a turn based on everything that we've seen happen throughout the course of this war. It was brilliant. I think it was such a smart decision by Kyle and Joe from a writing standpoint. And then the action on top of all that, these last two issues, the action was just fucking top notch. I mean, obviously Marcelo Costa does an outstanding job in general, and Eduardo Figueroa did a great job as well. But like, man, these two issues, like they really did save the best for last from an action standpoint. And if you're a big fan of the Massiverse, like at large, you got a little some fun stuff thrown in there for you as well. And if you're not, I mean, I hope those kind of things lead you to go check out at least one of the other titles. But yeah, just what a conclusion to the Catalyst War.
Yeah, and it was a while ago now, but Kyle Higgins had put out a poll, to vote for who do you think is going to,
No, who do you want?
Who do you want to hold the Radiant, if you will? So we get that, and I from the get go was Team Marshall. You were Team Nathan, of course. So it was fun to see how that all played out. I mean, everything about it was excellent. This was been an ending. It's not the ending of the story. Radiant Black is going to continue, but the Catalyst War itself has been an event that has been going on for some time now, and like you said, it did not disappoint. And being able to read 30 and 35 back to back like that, like I would have been pissed if I had to read 30 this week and say 30 and a half next week. Now that's not how they've done it. Right. They've always released them back to back, but like I'm really no.
That would have been quite the
so quite I'm really glad I got to read it all sort of as one. But it was excellent, and I can't wait to see where not just Radiant Black goes from here, but the Massiverse in general. Where Dead Lucky goes, where Radiant Red goes, where Radiant Pink goes, where Radiant Yellow goes. Right, there's just so many fresh new stories to tell. I'm so excited.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, and again, like this is a great time to go back and check in on everything on the Massiverse, because this is like the end of an era. This is like the first, like where we have like with the Infinity Saga. Like this is like their Infinity Saga. This is the end of all of that. So definitely a great time to go back and check it all and binge the hell out of it, because there's so much good stuff that the Massiverse has brought to the table. Moving on, we got Dark Horse, which has The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos Halloween special, Prodigy Slaves of Mars issue 3, Jupiter's Legacy finale issue 1. That's a title I talked about on the show. I know the Netflix show. We all know. We've seen at least parts of it. That story deserved so much freaking better. It's really wild that how that just did not work out well. Grendel, Devil's Crucible, Defiance issue 4, Summer Shadows issue 2, and then the return of Where Monsters Lie, Cul-de-sac issue 1. So this is the second volume of Where Monsters Lie, a title I talked about on this show previously. Of course, written by Kyle Starch with art by Peter Kowalski. Absolute must read for horror fans. And for me, like this is a wild return to the story. Like we get like a hell of a lot more happens in this first issue than I would have guessed. As much as I obviously read the whole first arc and everything like that, like I'm just stunned. This was such a rich first issue. There's a lot of moving pieces, and there's one massive wrinkle that we get, like kind of in passing, the way that it's delivered to us in this issue. And I was just like, wait, what the fuck? And just the way it's delivered is just like, God damn, like this is part of the brilliance of Kyle Stark still. Like he's so good. He's such a good comedic writer, and then just he knows where to, like, he knows how to time things out so fucking well, and whether that's from a dramatic standpoint or a comedic standpoint. So I'm so happy to have Where Monsters Lie back, and this is an outstanding title. I'm assuming that you gave this a look.
Yeah, so it's been a while, obviously, since I read it, and I was a little worried that I was like, oh, am I gonna remember what happened in the first volume? And it came right back to me. But what Kyle does really well is that he, throughout the issue, keeps referencing sort of what happened without giving you a full blow by blow, play by play of what happened in the first arc. So it
Yeah,
all just like kind of came back really nicely. And we get
good point.
reintroduced to a whole new crew, of monsters. And I just love, how, you get introduced to them all, right? We're in this new, dealing with these, with these, new monsters. And there's some interesting characters in there right off the bat.
Oh yeah.
You keep using the word wrinkle, right? I think one of the characters is like Mr. Wrinkle or something.
Oh
like
yeah, I
that,
think you're right. Actually,
right?
yeah.
And he's a creepy little
Yeah.
guy. This was just an excellent first issue, right in time for spooky season, which is awesome. So, if you haven't read Where Monsters Lie, go to your local comic book shop, right? Grab the first volume. You can check Hoopla; it might be on there. But definitely read it. This was a great, because this, like, there's no time between the first arc and this arc, right? It goes right into it.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
No. It's not like a year later, months later, years, whatever. It's bang, like in the immediate aftermath. So I love that. But if you hadn't read it, you could still read this and be like, okay, something happened. Um, you won't know the full extent of it, but he gives you enough information that you can kind of guess, like, well, not guess, but put together, like, oh, there was another neighborhood full of monsters. There was an event. They all got wiped out. Here are the survivors, and let's go, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
that's a fair point. Like you could, if you guys have listened or heard us talk about it and you haven't, you've been waiting on giving it a look, you can read this and get in on the fun. But you're gonna, if you read this and you're like, oh man, I want to read more, you're gonna want to pick up the trade. You're gonna want or find the single issues somehow, because it's this is great. This is an awesome first issue. Don't get me wrong, but like you're gonna have so much fun reading the entire first arc if you enjoy this first issue. And to confirm it to Mr. Wrinkly, you are
Mr.
absolutely.
Wrinkly.
You
Yeah.
were absolutely, you were correct. Like he's a weird fucker. Like in some of these characters,
He's a creepy ass dude.
yeah, there's like some of these characters, like, and they talk about it a lot in the first arc. It's a lot of fun. Like these like archetypes that you have in these communities, and just like basically just talking about different horror figures that we've seen in movies and whatnot over the years. I'm not sure who Mr. Wrinkly is supposed to be. But that's a conversation for another day. But just a
Yeah.
great, awesome first issue. One of my favorite Dark Horse titles that
We could possibly do around the time the trade's supposed to drop. Maybe Kyle Stark's back on. We could talk about that. Some NBA. And
yeah, we definitely need. He's got some more stuff. You know what? We'll talk about that off air.
We'll talk about that.
But all right, we got a few other titles to get to, a few of the publishers to get to. Let me take us through a couple here before you dig into. There's a Titan book that Joe's going to dig into today. From IDW, we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin Volume 2, Re-Evolution, Issue 3. That is a mouthful. Star Trek, Issue 25, and then the much hyped The Exorcism at 1600 Pen, Issue 1, which Joe has dibs on. I'm sure next week you'll be circling back on that in catching up.
Yeah, I meant to read it, and I just ran out of time. It's Pornchak Bashote, I believe.
It's I don't know if maybe it is. I don't know, but it's a loaded week either way. Continuing with that theme, from Mad Cave, we got Flash Gordon, Issue 3, Prairie Gods issue 2, which that I really enjoyed the first issue of Prairie Gods. The second one is even better. I was blown away by it. And it's kind of one of those things where if you didn't read the first one, you could still read the second one and you'll be fine. But I'd still recommend checking both out. I do have dibs on this. I'm curious where things go in the third issue. Just because again, it's like a second issue that I very much didn't expect. But again, conversation for later. Galaxy of Madness issue 4, Soul Taker issue 4. From Vault, we got Goobers issue 2, Godfather of Hell issue 1, which I think is by Kevin Scott, written by Kevin Scott, I should say. Def Leppard's Hysteria issue 0, which is a an issue that's kind of like an intro to the Def Leppard Hysteria trade that's going to be coming out all at once. And then from Titan Joe, we have a title that is a mouthful, but you check this out. I've been curious I knew you were going to check it out because I know you're good about checking out Titan stuff. Mindy Woodcock, the girl called, how do you say it? Cthulhu.
Yep.
Issue 1. This is by Cynthia Von Bueller.
Yeah, written and drawn by Cynthia Von Bueller. And this is a hard case crime as part of the hard case crime imprint, which is Charles or Dye's imprint over it, or association with Titan. And of course, they do Gun Honey, right, and a host of other novels and other graphic novels and things of that nature. So what we know about hard case crime is that they do like to give you these sort of hard boiled crime stories, this sort of noirish style stories, but also they're not afraid to get risque. And if you've ever seen or read a Gun Honey title, oftentimes there are exposed boobies. So Minky Woodcock, as you might guess, is going to have some naughtiness in it.
Why would I assume that?
Because of the word Minky.
Yeah.
But I was going to read this just because of the name Minky Woodcock, right? I am juvenile enough, right? I'm going to give it a go. And so I didn't know what to expect. I didn't, I couldn't remember the synopsis from when we talked about the trade, but I was going to read it. I just knew it. It sounded great then. And so when I went to read it this week, I didn't reread the synopsis. So, this book has a very unique, so Cynthia's art style is very macabre, if you will. It's sort of got this horrorish, like old school horror vibe to it. Like when I'm reading it, I feel like I'm looking at a comic that would have been made maybe in the 20s, 30s, 40s, somewhere in that era. It's got that classic horror vibe to it. And the beginning of the book starts off with Harry Houdini and a mistress just absolutely going at it.
Oh,
which is like, oh, okay, this is
all right.
This is a choice. And but as you're reading it, as you're going on, you learn that Minky Woodcock, who was the woman who Houdini was doing a disappearing act with, is not just some dame, or some floozy, right? She's actually a PI, and she gets asked to look into a case that takes a couple of different twists and turns, and just in this first issue alone. So I didn't know what to expect, and it turns out this book's right up my alley. It's a detective story. It's a murder mystery story, but it's got shades of that, of H.P. Lovecraft, Cthulhu, right? You're talking about Harry Houdini, so like the art fits the time period in which this story is taking place, and because it's hard case crime novel, it's gonna get a little seductive. So this is not a book to read in front of the children. And if your wife walks over your shoulder and says, "What the hell are you looking at?" Be prepared to say, "It's a comic book, wife. Come on, cut me some slack." But I loved it. I don't know if I want to call dibs, just because I want you to read it too.
Okay.
Right. And so, like, while I loved it, I want to read the second issue and kind of see where it goes, because like sometimes books can get a little too over the top, and so I want to see where it goes. But I absolutely loved it, and I definitely, like I said, I'm recommending to you. I think you should read it. I think you'd like it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because it's an interesting one, no
Okay.
doubt about it.
I'll make it a priority to have that ready for catching up next week, so I can circle back on that because this is something we've had on our hands for a little bit, and I remember when we talked about it in the synopsis, the
Solicit.
solicit. Thank you. Jeez, the word was just totally gone. When we talked about the solicit, I was like, this actually, like, for as funny as the title sounds, like the synopsis sounded pretty freaking interesting. So
Yeah.
I'll definitely give this one a look. From Oni Press, we got Epitaphs from the Abyss, issue 4, Rick and Morty, Youth in Rick Volt, issue 3. From Dynamite, we got the Powerpuff Girls, issue 4, and Vampirella, issue 673. And then to round things out, from Boom, we got House of Slaughter, issue 26, Grimm, issue 20, so good, Profane, issue 5, the finale of that title, which I actually fell behind on it. And where you were so on it, you finished that out, and it finished out well.
It did. I enjoyed it very much. I think it was a very fitting ending. I love the twists and turns that it took. Um, yeah, very, very enjoyable.
From then we got SIR issue 3, and then to finish it off, Joe, we got Vicarious issue 1 from friend of the show Ryan Parrott with art by Eleonora Carlini, and we get this. Our main character in this story is Justin Bright, and oh boy, like there's a lot going on with this guy, and I do not know how I fucking feel about him after this first issue. My goodness. And then from like a concept standpoint, like it's great. Like no shock, because obviously we're I make no mistake like of letting people know like I love Ryan Parrott's work. In this world, there are individuals called proxies who are people that allow the rich to essentially access their feelings and experiences through their implant, through a technological implant, I should say. It's kind of like no, I would say that pretty much sums it up well. Between the question marks with the practice of proxies, and then the main character who has like taken on this profession throughout the course, the story. This is a great start to this series. This is a great first issue.
What Ryan did really well in this issue was a great bit of distraction because he,
Mm,
he he pulls you in to this premise of being a proxy and the effect that it has on the person who's not only the proxy but also the people who are interacting with them, and then the main character, himself, and sort of, getting, seeing the world through his, point of view, and like he makes you feel a certain way about this character, and there's certain things that happen right throughout the course of the issue that just pull you in, that just suck you in. This is like, it is such a fascinating, premise, and sort of a little take, what's the word I'm looking for, like on where we are today with
yeah.
technology,
Yep.
right? That, like, he's creating this beautiful bit of, it's like a great magician who's getting you to look everywhere except the one place you need to look, and then
Yeah.
the way that issue ends, li- literally, like, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor.
Yeah. I
Right?
was
I was
very
just
much like,
like,
wait, what?
holy
Did,
shit.
huh? What?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
awesome. It was, yeah, great introduction to the world, and like you said, like it's very much like a magician's act. Like you do not see what's coming.
yeah,
Yeah, awesome. So, and again, this is like we said, just to round things out, round out what's new. This is what we're talking about. We're saying like this is a massive week. Look at where we are on the clock, and we have a couple of titles to break down. There's just so much. This is a banner week for comics. Period. So
yeah,
some awesome stuff to just go into your local comic shop. I haven't been in there a while. Just go in there and check out some random ass shit and see what cool stuff you'll find. A lot of good first issues and plenty more to pick from. But for us, you have a title that just I love this. It just ended, and you cannot wait any longer to break this title down.
yeah, yeah. I thought about. I was like, no, I can't talk about it on a Tuesday when it drops on the last issue drops on a
Yeah.
Wednesday, right? Even though we don't get into spoilers, I couldn't do that. So I knew I wanted to talk about this during spooky season. I've had this one underlined for spooky seasons for some time. And that, of course, is Crocodile Black from Boom Studios. I've talked about this book a few times, whether it be in my stack or my hidden gem of the week, or just, in what's new. Right from the first pages of this book, I was absolutely pulled in. This is written by Philip Kennedy Johnson with art by Somna, colors by Patricio Del Becci, and letters by Becca Carey. Synopsis. Danny, a seemingly mundane young man lost in escapism with a spiraling lack of control over his life, witnesses something during a delivery job that will change him forever, turning things as dark as the black crocodile skin boots that he can't take his eyes off. I gotta tell you, that's a brilliant synopsis, because a lot of times the synopsis, either gives is either too excessively wordy or gives too much away, and this gives you what you need to know while also not really giving you anything at the same time.
That's the
Right?
best
So
kind
it's
of
like, because
synopsis.
this presents Danny in a certain way, and he couldn't be any more, like, which is brilliant, right, because
Interesting.
like it doesn't like take away from the story. So this is 5 issues, and so like what I mean from talking about the synopsis is like Danny is a seemingly mundane young man lost in escapism, right? That is not incorrect, right? What you don't know, and what you find, it becomes apparent pretty quickly, is that this is a book into Danny's deep dive into psychosis and madness, right?
Oh, that's where that character
And
goes.
what a true terror can come from finally being comfortable in one's own skin, right? So we have this character Danny, who you get right from the beginning. He's in his room, he's on his phone, right, doing his thing, and then all of a sudden, the next panel is allowed data usage done for the day, right, kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, like, is he, you don't know exactly where it's going, but like he's obviously he's got helicopter parents, right?
Mm.
And what you learn is that Danny is dealing from a severe obsessive disorder. So his parents, keep him on a tight leash. His psychiatrist, keeps him on, a tight leash. So he's got things like restrictions on his phone for days, so he doesn't escape, right? As the synopsis would imply, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So he's, he doesn't escape into this world and, like lose himself, if you will. So his mom and his sister treat him with kid gloves, but his dad's a real fucking prick. And it's his father that sort of becomes the catalyst that finally sends Danny into the deep end, right? So the first issue, you meet Danny. Okay, you don't quite know what's going on at first. He's leaving the house. He's got like an Uber type job, and on his job, he's on the phone with his psychiatrist, and she's talking. So now you get a sense, okay, there's something more going on here, right? There's more to meets the eye, but you don't know quite yet. And then when he gets back home, sitting around the dinner table, they're having a conversation, and then his father just starts like a prick, just needling him. And what you find out is that his dad's been going through his, reading through his personal diary, because Danny, what you get is he likes to draw, right? And early on, you see him drawing this little boy on a tricycle. So he says, "Why are you drawing Maddie again?" And you get the sense that Maddie was a brother that is either dead or has been missing, and Danny has seemed to, he might know what happens, but he can't like recall. And the father like holds that against him, like, why can't, essentially it's like, what happened to my boy, why won't you tell me, and like despises him for it. That's the kind of the feeling I got, and that just sends Danny bang into this downward spiral.
Hmm.
And what it does is that earlier, when Danny was doing this delivery job, he's delivering food to a house, knocks on the door, no one enters, but the door is unlocked. He walks in, and there's a man in his recliner, and he has passed away. He is dead. So Danny, like, all of a sudden becomes enamored. He's this dead person. And for some reason that has unlocked something in Danny. So that at the dinner table later that night, when the father just sort of pushes all his buttons, he leaves the house. He leaves the house without his meds. He doesn't tell anybody where he's going. And he ends up going back to this man's house whose name's Leo Black. And this is sort of where that escapism and that obsessive, nature of his really um, kicks into full gear. And he ends up sleeping there. He ends up sort of becoming Leo Black. He finds out he's an old war vet. He starts reading through his journal. He takes his crocodile skin boots. He starts smoking cigarettes because so he essentially is becoming this person. And you find out that he assumes, going through his journals and his diaries, that not only is he a war vet, but there's a gun. He sort of adopts this personality that Leo Black is a killer. And so that's who I'm going to become. Right. And this is all within that first issue. Each issue that follows this, you see Danny just sort of devolve deeper and deeper and deeper into this tunnel of psychosis. And the violence and the chaos that ensues and the situation that Danny finds himself in is so fantastically effed up. And that's what I love about Philip Kennedy Johnson's writing style, because I find him to be a very gritty writer, I should say. Right? Like, it's just he digs into the crevices of his characters and brings out a rawness in them, and the violence that he just sort of that is within this character of Danny. There's no depths to it, right? And he just gets ratcheted up each in every issue, and it becomes very apparent that, like, Danny, who he becomes, he almost becomes this urban legend. And one of the things that Philip Kennedy Johnson does really well in this first issue is it starts off with like 1 month prior sort of thing, and you're at this grisly murder scene, and you see these bloody footprints, right? And they're talking about this urban legend who in the killer in the crocodile boots, right? And then oh no, it says present day, and then it says 1 month earlier is where we get the background on Danny, right?
Wow.
So I had that background. So and then so it's like it almost starts where the series ends, and then all the issues in between sort of is like telling that story, bringing you right back, almost a full circle sort of thing.
Interesting.
So I thought that was a brilliant way to tell the story, and the ending is absolutely just, it's epic. It really is. I'm not going to dive too deep into the characters because they're like the main character is Danny. And even though he's dead, in that first issue alone, it's Leo Black, because it just, the more you learn about him and how it shapes who Danny sort of becomes. But there's a detective, Kriv, I believe is his name, who's sort of, he's the cat to Danny's mouse sort of thing. You get this cat and mouse game going on, but there's also a story within the story of a gang war that's going on, right? So how does Danny sort of get caught into all of that as well, right? So, like, Philip Kennedy Johnson's writing style is like absolutely perfect for a story like this, because it's a horror book in the sense of like just the viciousness and everything that happens, because it's a sort of a serial killer on the loose sort of thing. It's also a detective story, so it's got all these things that I love all wrapped into one book, and just as the writing is very gritty and raw, Somna Paul's art and Patricio's colors are just as raw, and gritty, and there's such a perfect pairing the two styles just go together so well. And one of the things I love about Del Pecci's colors is that, to me, they really represent reality, and versus sort of Danny's vision, and sort of like how he sees the world, right? So at times you get shades of cool colors, blues, light purples, that to me sort of represent the depression of Danny, and then you get vivid, bright reds, yellows, and oranges that sort of represent the violence, within him, right? So it's almost like his sort of personalities, and you know, the way Danny sees the world is again, Salmonth, does a great job at sort of distorting the art there, where it's scribbles, right? Where sort of Danny sort of sees himself, like you'll see like his body, but then like his head will be like the scribbled crocodile head, or he'll have these reptile eyes, or like if you see a character in the forefront and in the background you've got the shadows, you get like this scribbled outline of a character that's Danny, right? So like that idea of using scribbles to sort of represent psychosis and madness, right? It's brilliant. It's brilliant stuff. So this is the type of book where we have the rule for, right? It's a boom, it's a number one, you read it. Excellent, excellent. And it's like I said, it's 5 issues. But this is something that could have maybe gone another 5 issues if you wanted it to.
Ooh.
Or maybe you could, this is what I love about it, right? As it is, it's a tight 5 issues. If that's all there is, it's fantastic. If you wanted to, tweak things a little bit and have it go another 5 issues, you could, right? And
you still could.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
You tweak it, right? You know what I mean? Like, but like,
so you're saying it's too late. Like you could have, like,
I think the way that it ended was.
Got it. Okay.
You know what
that's
I mean?
That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay. Cool.
But
okay.
I'm sure you still could anyways. But just like, to me, this was just sort of like a perfect example of boom at its best. Right? Just such a good story. 5 issues, tight. It's violent. It's vicious. It's raw. It's emotional. It's everything you want in a comic book, in an indie comic book.
If this isn't obviously, it's going to be a finalist in the award conversation this year, and I'm going to make sure that I read it before we make our final decisions, before we do the floppies. But if you don't have it as one of your choices, I'm gonna be stunned, because you read this first issue and you were all in on it, and you have remained all in on it until the end of your breakdown of this title. Like I'm not saying that you don't love every title that you talk about. Obviously, we love the titles that we break down here. That's why we do it. But it's not every time where I feel like you have at least been like as excited about the first issue as you were the 5th issue. Like you didn't like go backwards once.
Yeah.
And like that's in some titles, like we see like, oh, the second issue was good, but the first issue was probably a little bit better. And then the 3rd chapter was really good, but so on and so forth. Like this was just either staying the course or a steady build the entire way. That's remarkable. My big question for you coming out of this isn't even the movie show conversation. So last time we convened, you had talked about the One Hand and the Six Fingers. Now, obviously, that is 2 titles, but it's really telling one story. And it's going to come out as a trade all at once, all together. That is going to be, so that's 12 issues technically, so a little bit more of a read, but still like one concise story that'll be a fun read to dig into. It sounds like if you like that title, you will also like this title, the Crocodile Black, and vice versa. If, Joe, gun to your head, you had to pick which one you're gonna read first. If you're you're just telling me. We can just make it friendly. No guns to anybody's head. We're just being friendly here. Which one would you tell me to read first if I have everything at my disposal?
I would say read Crocodile Black first.
Okay. All right. That's what I'm gonna do then.
But that's hard. I mean, like, part of the reason is it's a tight 5 issues, right? Where One Hand and Six Fingers, is 6 titles each, right?
Mhm.
So you can read this one, you'll fly through it, and then get to that one like very quickly.
It's fair.
But they're both like they're two very different stories, but they both fall into that mystery serial killer cat and mouse uh kind of genre. Now, One Hand Six Fingers is a little more meta, a little more philosophical.
Hmm.
You know, Crocodile Black is more vicious and violent. But they're both so good. I'm taking a look. I mean, we've even added a couple categories here to the floppies, but like most surprising, the Hawkeye Award for most surprising book, the
That's where
Once
I'm
and Future
thinking.
Award for best new series, best limited series. I mean, Crocodile Black could fall under any one of those three.
Yes, it
This is
could.
going to be a very difficult floppies this year because there's a lot of really good books that came out, and a lot of good books just for those three categories alone. Because you've got this, you got the One Hand and Six Fingers, you've got Kill All Immortals,
And you just added Beneath the Trees to where nobody sees
right? Beneath
to
the
the
Trees, nobody
conversation. Like,
sees, right?
fuck.
So, like,
Yeah.
it's gonna be tough. Gonna be
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, it is, but I am excited to check this one out. And it just, if nothing else, this episode and then TLDR 102 highlight how much can be done with these crime serial killer detective stories, where you have two titles that you're talking about, but both done very differently by their respective creative teams. Very excited to dig into those. I'm also excited. This is kind of weird timing. So the artist of Crocodile Black, is his first name is Somna. The title that I am talking about today is Somna from Distillery. This is our first Distillery title that we're talking about. This is purely coincidental that Joe talked about Somna's title, Crocodile Black, and I'm talking about Somna from Distillery. I'm not going to try and tongue tie myself any further. The writers and artists for the series, this is not something we see all that often. We have two writers and two artists, the same ladies, Becky Cloonan and Tula Lotay. They both drew and wrote this story together because we're dealing with a dream sequence and then a real life sequence where the artist and writer are, I mean, the two different artists are taking on distinct parts of the story, which I will dig into a little bit later. For the colors, Tula Lotay did colors. I'm assuming she was one that did her own colors, but then we also have Lee Loveridge, who we talk about all the time, and then Dee Cunniffe, who pops up quite a bit as well. And then letters, we have Lucas Gattoni, who I don't think I'm all that too familiar with. This is 3 double-sized issues. Now, for those who haven't read anything from Distillery, these are like a different kind of magazine size. These are more like
Prestige.
there you go. Great call. These are prestige format in terms of like they're a little bit wider. So as Joe has mentioned before, when we deal with prestige stuff, it's not as easy. You can't put that in a long box. You got to find a way to put it on your bookcase and get creative with it. But the other thing is too, I think I've only done one title on here where it was 3 issues, and that was Bloodrick, but there was so much to going on with the character there. I could have done that here, but this at the same time, these are basically double-sized issues. We get 2 chapters within each issue of Somna. So it's essentially a 6-issue story. They just packaged it as 3 issues. The trade is available in hardcover edition, actually. I don't know if we have it in paperback, but I've seen that they have the hardcover one. And for those who haven't checked this out already, it was so popular and there were so many covers for this thing that there's actually a cover gallery hardcover edition of this as well.
Coward. There was a beautiful Tula Lotay cover that I wanted to use for your background today. And you said, "Oh, go with that." I'm like, coward.
A little risque.
Yeah.
Quite. I mean, this whole title is risque, quite honestly.
Yeah, you're talking about a risque book. Why not go with the very seductive cover I had chosen for you?
Quite honestly, I love that the main cover, like that's the when I think of Somna, that cover, the cover that I chose. If you guys follow us on Instagram, you'll know what I'm talking about. That's the first one I think of with Somna. There's so many more that we could have picked from too. Like forget about the risque. They're just I don't know how many covers there were, but they made a fucking like book out of it. Obviously, that tells you guys something about how good this series was, how popular it was. So without further ado, the synopsis for this thing: set amidst the terrifying backdrop of the witch hunts in a quiet 1600s English village, Somna follows one woman's descent into an erotic escape from the confines of her puritanical world. Now, this is an English village, and I was trying to double check, and unless I missed it somewhere, I didn't see any mention of Salem. That said, it very much feels like this is set in Salem. I don't know what went on with witch trial stuff back in England during this time, but obviously, like 1600s English village, technically that is what
Stratford
Salem
upon
was.
Avon, perhaps.
Maybe, but that's technically what. Whatever. I don't know what the hell you're trying to say. I just want to make that
That's where
clear.
Shakespeare was born there, Chief. Come on.
I didn't know that.
You're the
Okay, cool.
English guy here. Come on.
Uh, English, yeah, whatever. Anyways, the characters that we have in this, our main character is Ingrid. She is a housewife. I mean, like I feel like women back then, I don't know how often they had jobs outside of work and within the house or maybe on the farm in some capacity. Obviously, a much different time. She is married to Roland, and I'll get to Roland in a second, but she is the one who's starting to experience some very risque dreams, and that is you talk about like how things like start with your first issue. I think it was Mickey Woodcock. You said like he starts off right away, very risque. Somna is something that you need to read in private at home. Like that, you do not want to see people reading this thing because you don't want people seeing you reading this thing because on top of it being like just risque, the covers are so awesome. People are going to look at this cover and be like, oh, what's that? And they're going to want to see what's inside. And then you're going to have to be like, you're going to have to navigate it very carefully. And while Becky Cloonan's art is awesome, and I'll talk about it more, like the stuff that the stuff that will bring you in is obviously Tula Lotte's art, who we've talked about her before on the show when you did Barnstormer, the Dark Horse title that she did with Scott, Comixology original. Like her stuff is striking, her art style, and I feel like that brings in people who don't necessarily read comics as well. That's the stuff where it gets really risque. Particularly, I mentioned Roland. This is Ingrid's husband. He is the town's bailiff, and he is the chief witch hunter of the town as well. Then we got Maja, who is Ingrid's friend, kind of feels like the town gossip. I don't know if she's officially that, but she pretty much serves that role throughout this story.
Town knock. Am I right?
Yeah. Father Goodman, spelled Gud. Father Goodman is the town priest, extremely judgmental, as one might expect. Then we have Sigurd, who is the widower of the woman in town who was just burned at the stake for witchcraft. And then we get this nameless, shadowy figure who you meet in like the first couple pages in Ingrid's dreams. And I'll tell you what, guy's got some moves. Like you got
like Jagger.
Yeah, but I'd say he puts Jagger to shame, quite honestly. Give credit where credit's due. Got to tip my old pilgrim hat to that dude. He knows what's going on.
Strong hip game.
There's a lot. You know what? Let's just say he's a confirmed villain. And then as I mentioned, like the art in this story, I'm anytime you're talking about like puritanical trial stuff, especially this time of year, it's obviously going to be interesting for people, but I always find that stuff fascinating just because we know how ridiculous so much of that stuff from the time was, but then it's people have found ways over time, especially like in the last decade or so, to create interesting twists off of that premise, where it's like, obviously like the Crucible's the old one where it's like it's a witch hunt in the sense of like this is all a bunch of bullshit. Obviously very interesting, but now it's like, well, no, maybe there were some witches in there, and people like Fear Street, we see some of that mixed in that Netflix movie series that we got, and then in here it's a totally different spin where you're dealing with a woman who's like her like sexual desire, she has to like kind of suppress everything because of how her husband is and because of the times and how women have to speak and whatnot, or maybe not speak and all of this. And it's an interesting little wrinkle in all of this. And there's so much else going on that's like that this has an impact on. So you have that character driven stuff with Ingrid, and then you have this larger plot at play that's just like, it's not ideal for her to be going through all this shit at this point in time in this town. But going back to the art, so Tula Lotte is doing the art sequence in this. Becky Cloonan is doing the real world stuff. And I already talked about, with Tula and how her stuff, as much as it's like she has like a realism like style to her art, her colors really, really play well to a dream sequence. And even we see that in Barnstormers as well. And I think that kind of plays well into the times and everything. If you haven't heard that breakdown, Joe did that quite a while back, and it was such a good title. Really enjoyed that one from Dark Horse. So you could like her lines, yes, you could see that her doing like the non-dream sequence, but then with Becky Cloonan, where it does have like a little bit more of like a cartoony kind of vibe to her style, her art style, her sketchiness in her lines really fit this time so well, and it's such a stark difference between the dream sequence. I love, and in the dream sequence too, she's like prettier. She's not like this ugly character, but just everything looks more beautiful. So it's a really interesting juxtaposition with those two art styles, and having them work as the two writers and then the two artists, it's amazing how seamless everything is. Like it makes perfect sense, but it's like it's so well done going from real life into the dream sequence back and forth. And it's not like we go crazy back and forth all the time, but you go through that. And I really enjoyed that experience of it. And just alone, like I've talked about some of the story element of it, but like from if you like comic book art and you like experiencing different art styles, like that is a reason enough to check out this series. But other than that, man, like I don't think I really have a whole lot. I'm just double checking my notes here. I don't think I have a whole lot else to add. Yeah, no, I feel like I pretty much covered all the ground here. It's for this time of year. It's obviously I've been sitting on this one for a bit. It wrapped up a little while ago, but this is a perfect book to talk about for spooky season. It's not scary. There's definitely scary elements to it, and maybe if dream sequence stuff freaks you out a little bit, maybe there's like or maybe like a certain corner in your room and it's a little bit too dark and it like bugs you out. Maybe don't read this right before bed. But other than that, like I wouldn't say this is like holy shit, this is really fucking scary. No, it's like it's a spooky book, great for this time of year, and you don't even just need to read it exclusively in October.
Tualote, her art is some of the most gorgeous art I've ever put my eyes on. And that's not just comic books. It is just stunningly beautiful art.
Yeah.
Her colors, her lines, the sort of I feel like I'm being transported in time, right? When looking at her art. Like it's got sort of this Gatsby-esque sort of romance to her
Hmm.
style. And the colors, everything. It is just quite simply, it's stunningly beautiful art. So whenever I see, her name either in a series or she does a lot of cover work as well, like this is a book I really want to read, and not just for the naughtiness of it, um, but the premise sounds tremendous, and Cloonan's art too is also exceptional. So like the two of them, and I love the fact that this is two female creators
Hmm.
writing and as the primary artists on this title. Love that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah, this is and you're right, especially with the when you talk about Tula Lotay, like the fact that we get to see her art in comic books, like we're so fortunate. Like just because like her talent is just like like her and Stephanie Hans is like this is stuff that's like too beautiful for comics. Quite honestly, like it's remarkable that we're seeing her tell stories in comic books. So just it's a different experience if you haven't seen her art already. You probably have if you're a Wednesday warrior and you go to the local comic shop, you've probably seen some of her covers. But yeah, like in where you're absolutely right in that Barnstormers story, you get that like it provides this Gatsby vibe. You it's not like this is crazy stark difference from her colors approach, from Barnstormers to this. But I promise you, you're not going to think of Gatsby at all when you're looking at the
Love
colors
that.
here because it's just oh god. I'm looking up. There's this one page I keep for some reason open up to, and it's just maybe you might get spooked a little bit by some of this. You might see that dude with the
I'm
moves.
hardened now, man. I survived a near bear attack.
Yeah,
You know,
honest to God, like that's yeah. There you go. But yeah, awesome. So Somna, Crocodile Black, definitely shit you guys want to be checking out. Make sure you get your hands on the trade for Crocodile Black is going to probably take a little while, so maybe try and find a way to scrounge up those 5 individual issues. But Somna, you can go and get that trade. talk to your local comic shop and get that ordered for you. You definitely want to be checking out both of these titles. We got more horror stuff planned for TLDR 104. Look at us, Joe. We're making good on getting in some main lines before the end of the year. I'm excited about that. Anything else before we get going?
No, just order some goddamn pies, will you?
Until next week, stay sexy.
You know it, baby. Oh, keep reading. There we go. To get